Like, you're going to find probably about 50 different brands of pepper sauce if you walk into any grocery store in those neighborhoods.
Hi, I'm Christina Knight with 13 in New York City. We're here with 3 hometown contestants on the second season of The Great American Recipe, and we're going to talk about food, flavors, and family. Welcome to Brad Maloff, Liana Pierre, and Selma Hack.
Thank you for having us.
The diversity of New York, makes it the attraction it is, right? You can get any type of cuisine here by people who grew up making it, or they're new and trying something out, fusion. I hope you can share, where can people go in New York to shop for the ingredients that you like to use, or if they want to eat off of what you have on your plate, where can they go? And, Brad, do you want to start us off with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, I keep kosher. So generally, I go to normal grocery stores for produce and things like that. But for specialty, for my butcher, I go to a kosher butcher, either in Brooklyn or on the Upper East Side. In terms of actually finding Libyan food, for some reason, there's actually, to my knowledge, 0 Libyan restaurants in the city or really anywhere in the United States. So I wish I could tell people check this place out to kind of get a taste of my food. But there's really not a place, which is surprising for a place like New York. But actually, something that's exciting in my life is next month in July, I'm doing a little pop-up dinner. I'm taking over a restaurant on the Upper East Side and kind of doing a Libyan night where I'm cooking and hosting at a restaurant. So, if people are around in July, they could experience a Cook with Brad Libyan meal. But otherwise, I think they could tune into the show and kind of see those recipes and then, try to recreate them that way.
Selma, how about you? Tell us where we might experience the stores that you're used to shopping in or the meals that you eat and serve.
Luckily, if you're in New York, all you have to do is jump on the A, take the A to Lefferts, and come up on the last stop, which is Lefferts and Liberty. That will place you directly into Little Guyana. Richmond Hill is where I was born and raised. Lefferts and Liberty is the iconic, it's now dubbed Little Guyana. You'll see the sign right above the Lefferts Boulevard sign. The moment you step off the train onto the platform, I guarantee you will be greeted by some sort of chutney music. Just there's speakers and Honda Civics driving through with this soca dance hall playing. And then you make your way down and you're welcomed with aroma from the Little Guyana bakeries. I can start naming just the amount of different roti shops that you can visit, but then also just making your way down the avenue. And going to the grocers. There's so many different fresh produce stores. J&B is where I always go to. As soon as I land in New York, that's where I get and, bring back my supplies, from everything with pastries through, seasonings and spices. And then, of course, is the iconic and classic Sybil's Bakery. And that has been there for years on end. It's a generational Guyanese. They serve, great pastries, home food as well, too. So everything from pine tart and salaras to just pepper pot and curries, definitely. And the good thing is, because the West Indian community is so close-knit, and we really do take care of each other, most all of these restaurants will cater halal. So they do offer halal meat as well, too. So even, just being welcomed by that in itself, it's just, you don't have that worry of going into these shops and getting a plate of roti and curry. But I always, from JFK, I go straight to Trin City, which is a Trinidadian roti shop, because I don't often get here in Orlando doubles and aloo pie. So that's usually where one of my first go-tos.
Thank you. And as a follow-up, can you explain, for those who don't know, what is roti?
So roti is it really is. It's pretty much I would say the bread equivalent to our dishes. So Guyana it's British Guyana, and the Indians were brought over through indentured servitude to British Guyana. And during that time, they had to, recreate dishes from memory. Nobody had recipes, so they were recreating what they were accustomed to eating in India. So in India, a lot of the ancestors would eat what's now called parathas or chapatis. So for them to remake that in Guyana, we now have what we call paratha roti or oil roti. So it's layers of thin dough that is, I don't know how best to describe it. It's just a soft dough that we clap in the air to kind of release those air pockets. And you'll see the different layers of dough between the butter and the oil. And it's pretty much, you just tear it apart and you just use it as your vessel to eat your curry, stew, whatever it is. I like it just plain butter and roti. Sometimes we make sugar roti. You would make it on the tawa. It'll puff up and it's a different version of roti.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation. Leanna, let's talk about the Bronx or wherever it is that you source some of your foods and where people can go to have some Caribbean cuisine such as you prepare.
So sourcing the food, honestly, if you're in the North Bronx, if you're anywhere on Boston Road, White Plains Road, Dyer Avenue, like whether you're going into mom and pop shops or big box grocery stores, because of the population that lives in those areas, you're going to find the items. You're going to find all the fresh thyme, all of the jerk seasonings, all of the pepper sauce, whether it's from Trinidad, Barbados, Antigua. Like you're going to find probably about 50 different brands of pepper sauce if you walk into any grocery store in those neighborhoods. So if you're Baychester, Dyer Avenue, anything, I would say East 180th Street and up on the 5 train, you're good. You're going to find what you need to make Caribbean food. In terms of where to go to get some, if you don't want to make it yourself, I'm going to start with my favorite bakery. It's called Al Cholo, and it's on White Plains Road. And there you can get things like coconut bread, conkeys, currant slices, coconut slices. It's just an amazing bakery. Cakes, for special occasions. If you're looking for a black cake for like a christening or a birthday party or something, like you can get everything there. It's a one-stop shop. Bread pudding, I mean, you name it. So that's my favorite bakery in the Bronx, hands down. In terms of getting Bajan food now, I have to go a little bit further. I would probably go to Brooklyn, go to Culpeper's. You can get macaroni pie. You can get cuckoo and fish stew. Cuckoo is part of the national dish of Barbados. You're going to get your rice and peas. You're going to get your cook-up rice. So I would definitely say Culpeper's in Brooklyn for food and Al Cholo in the Bronx for baked goods.
Thank you. I appreciate all those subway references too. A train, the 4. Brad was talking about the Upper East Side. That's Q train or the 456.
Exactly.
Thanks for sharing that. And in case we don't get to make your recipes at home. I'm curious if this question will reflect your family heritage or maybe your experimentation. Can you share a favorite go-to ingredient and why you love it?
This is going to sound so simple, but it's thyme. I cannot remember a time. See what I did there? I cannot remember a time where there wasn't thyme in the house. Like my mother used it so often in her cooking that we grew it in the windowsill. It was always available, whether it was going in soups, stews, even in rice, just plain white rice, the way we make it, it includes thyme in it. It is just one of those herbs that is an everyday and celebration herb. And so I would say that's probably my go-to thing that is just connected to how I learned to cook from my mom and grandma.
So similar to Liana, it is quite funny because, Liana is from Barbados of background and my parents are from Guyana. And, every West Indian, Caribbean, when they come to the States, like the first thing that they do with a little piece of, patch of grass and a little lawn that they have in their front yard, they are growing thyme and pepper. And Those are the two things that I cannot do without. And for me particularly, we have what we call broadleaf thyme. And then I also use like a fine dried thyme. And it's Guyana dry thyme is how I've, grown accustomed to it. And I actually did bring that with me on the show, along with the riri pepper, which for me, similar to Liana, I use thyme in just like everything from like roast chickens to roast turkey to curries, just everything we use thyme. And then for the pepper as well too, I feel like both add a very different note. So it's like it enhances the savoriness of that dish. For the pepper particularly, it adds a heat level that's not too overpowering, but it really just like adds more to the dish and it just brings out a lot of the flavor. Growing up, that was something huge. Like even as a child, we were introduced to pepper and pepper sauce at early ages. So having that rare pepper, at least 3 to 5 in a dish, it mellows out as a background note, but it just enhances the level of whatever it is that you're cooking. So everything from like chow mein to curries, we even put it on fruit. We pickle it with mangoes, a little bit of vinegar and salt. It's like the best thing. So for me, it's the dry thyme and the rare pepper.
Salma, you're my soul sister because you
I know,
spoke about
we
that
are.
little patch of land. And I will
Yes.
tell you, I have 2 types of thyme growing in my backyard garden right now, and 3 types of pepper growing in
Yes.
my backyard garden.
It's actually a little like joke amongst like the Caribbean West Indian community that, you know, if you, that's how you know it's a Caribbean household. You'll see in their front yard a little, like, you know, thyme bush growing, a little pepper plant.
Salma, can you show us with your hand, perhaps, like how big is a wiri wiri pepper?
It's small, so it's kind of, you know, it's like a little tomato, almost like. So they go from like miniature tomatoes to like huge. There's different varieties. Like the what I will plant in Florida will taste different to like what is planted in New York. Some of it will be different in potency to what's planted in Guyana as well too. It's like a tart spice. Though it may be small, it is mighty.
And Brad, how about you? What is a go-to ingredient and why is it that way?
Sure. So I think that like Middle Eastern food and Libyan food specifically has a very specific spice profile. We use a spice blend called Baharat, which has kind of an assortment of different spices, which include, I think, cardamom and allspice and cinnamon and cumin and all these things. So I think certainly that. But I think like in terms of my specific cooking style, the biggest thing for me is like an abundance of fresh herbs. I think maybe it ties to like my New York roots and kind of how like emphasized like fresh produce is in New York. Like you go to the Union Square Farmers Market and you kind of like are always just like constantly buying herbs. Like the first thing I do is like anytime I go to the grocery store is like check out the herbs, and my fridge is always like abundantly full of like all this green herbs. So I think that's like kind of like my distinct cooking style, like kind of even like beyond like my like heritage cooking. So I think like that's like my Brad signature is just like tons of dill, tons of parsley, tons of cilantro. I think those are kind of like my must-haves in the kitchen.
Brad, you surprised me. I just knew you were going to say caraway. I just knew it.
Yeah, I do love caraway too. That's definitely something I use very often.
And I will say too, during our cooking time in Brad Station, it was like a grocer. It was like all of the nice herbs just like laid out in the baskets. It was a really pretty scene to see.
I appreciate that. It always smells really good.
Brad, as a follow-up to that, what do you put caraway in?
I'll use it with meat. I'll use it with fish. I'll even use it with a pasta dish.
We're going to learn about how food connects you to your family, to your heritage in the Great American Recipe. And I want to ask here, are there ways that you are adding to the palette of your heritage?
I definitely think there are ways that I'm adding to it. And I think it's just more of this fusion, right? Like it's tempting to try and silo cooking into this is my style. But I think for all of us, even though we have distinct influences based on our heritage, we are an amalgamation of our experiences, right? And so I think the more that I cook and the more that I experiment, the more you're seeing more of these fusion type dishes. So for example, just yesterday on my Instagram, I posted some birria tacos that I made for the first time. It was a first attempt because the ultimate goal is to make oxtail birria tacos. So you get a little bit of that Mexican experience with my Caribbean experience put together. And I'm sure in the end, there'll probably be a little bit of South because oxtail is popular in the US South as well. And so I think that's my way of adding it rather than making it kind of siloed, expanding it to include all of my experiences.
One of the great things about living in America, too, is that you get to taste so many different cuisines. As, you know, Liana pointed out, growing up in New York, every corner, every neighborhood had a little niche, and experiencing those different flavors and varieties and seeing how we can merge and mesh them together. It's actually funny because, like, on the show, there was a lot of times where I would cook something and then there would be, another contestant, come over and say, hey, we make something very similar, but we call it this. Or, we make this as well, too, but we'll add this instead. So just taking those takeaways and then trying to incorporate it, making it something of your own. I feel like that as a home cook, you're ever evolving too, because you get very comfortable in having the same dishes on rotation. So it's just kind of like, how can I spice this up? How can I make it different and make it my own?
I'm actually in Israel right now, and that's where my dad grew up, and he's one of 16 children. And so funny enough, as I'm here, I'm going from aunt to aunt, and they're all feeding me kind of our traditional foods. And in my head, I'm like, oh, my food is exactly like theirs. But as I'm eating it, it's the same, but it's actually different. And I'm thinking why. In a way, I actually like, I'm like, I almost feel like mine has evolved and has become even better, but I don't want to tell them that. So hopefully they don't tune in and see that. But I'm thinking like, why does mine taste a little bit different? Like the ingredients are the same. And I think the emphasis on kind of like, for myself is kind of picking out seasonal ingredients and really taking the time at the grocery stores to develop relationships with my butcher and things like that to like kind of like make sure I'm always sourcing the best ingredients. And I do think that those little kind of nuances make such a difference. And also I think like being in New York and being in the States and kind of having a more global palate has expanded my cooking horizons, where I really take like kind of more thought to like what temperature should this be cooking at? Like, should it cook at a high or low temperature, and kind of experimenting over time to kind of really get the best result and a consistent result each time. So I think those little things have like, in my way, like evolved and kind of even bettered kind of the kind of heritage foods of my family.
Thank you all for this fun and enlightening conversation. The Great American Recipe is on PBS stations like 13 at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central. You can watch it on broadcast, live stream it, or download the PBS or 13 Explorer app to watch it when you want to.